Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai World News. We are diving straight into a massive story shaking global energy markets today. Brent crude oil has plunged by more than 10%, one of the sharpest single-day drops in recent memory, and it all comes down to a statement from Iran. According to both BBC News and the Financial Times, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced that the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical shipping choke points on the entire planet, will remain open for commercial vessels for the duration of the current ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Now, why does this matter so much? The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, and roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through it. Whenever there's any threat to that passage, energy markets go into panic mode. So when Iran essentially said, "Don't worry, ships can pass freely," traders breathed a massive sigh of relief, and oil prices fell off a cliff. The Financial Times reports that Brent crude dropped more than 10% following that statement, sending shockwaves through commodity markets globally. For everyday consumers, a sustained drop in oil prices could eventually mean cheaper fuel and lower energy bills, though analysts caution that the situation in the Middle East remains volatile and prices could reverse quickly if tensions flare up again. Now let's turn to the diplomatic development that triggered that oil market reaction: the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. As reported by BBC News, a 10-day truce between the two countries is now officially in effect. And in a significant development, Iran-backed Hezbollah has voiced its support for the agreement, even as broader negotiations continue between the United States and Iran. The ceasefire has brought an immediate halt to weeks of intense fighting that had taken a devastating toll on Lebanon. BBC News also reports that the mood inside Lebanon is one of cautious celebration. Thousands of Lebanese citizens have been rushing back toward the south of the country, many ignoring official warnings to wait before returning to their homes. The images coming out are striking: convoys of cars, families reuniting, people checking on homes they haven't seen in weeks. But, and this is a big but, BBC News is careful to point out that while the ceasefire is being celebrated, the obstacles to a lasting peace remain very real. Ensuring the truce holds will be incredibly difficult given the deep-seated tensions in the region, the unresolved political issues, and the ongoing U.S.-Iran negotiations happening in parallel. Both outlets describe this as a fragile moment of respite, not a resolution. The coming days will be critical in determining whether this truce holds or breaks down. All right, shifting gears now to a story at the intersection of artificial intelligence, national security, and high-stakes politics. The Financial Times is reporting that Dario Amodei, the CEO of AI company Anthropic, is set to meet with Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, as the U.S. government seeks access to Anthropic's powerful Mythos AI model. This is a significant meeting, and the timing makes it even more fascinating because it's happening despite ongoing lawsuits questioning whether Anthropic itself poses a national security threat. So what's the big deal about Mythos? BBC News has been covering the serious alarm bells being raised by finance ministers and top banking executives about this model's capabilities. Experts are warning that Mythos potentially has an unprecedented ability to identify and exploit cybersecurity weaknesses, which, in the wrong hands, could be extraordinarily dangerous. And yet, the U.S. government apparently wants access to it. That tension between the risks of the technology and the desire to harness its power is exactly what this White House meeting is about. It reflects a broader dilemma that governments around the world are grappling with. How do you regulate AI tools that are potentially dangerous while also making sure your own side has access to their capabilities? There are no easy answers here, and this story is definitely one to watch closely. Here's a story that sent shockwaves through London today. According to the Financial Times, counterterrorism police shut down Kensington Gardens, one of London's most famous royal parks, to conduct a major security search. Here's the alarming detail: an Iranian-linked group has claimed responsibility for using drones carrying deadly materials to attack the nearby Israeli embassy. The park was completely closed to the public while officers swept the area. Kensington Gardens sits in one of the most visited parts of London, adjacent to Hyde Park and close to major tourist attractions, so a closure of this scale is extraordinary. The Financial Times reports this development adds yet another layer of tension to the already fraught situation surrounding Iran, Israel, and the broader regional conflict we've been covering today. Authorities have not yet given a full public briefing on what exactly was found or the precise nature of the threat, but the fact that counterterrorism units were deployed speaks to how seriously this is being taken. We will continue to follow this story as more details become available. Now to a story involving the family of one of Africa's most controversial leaders. BBC News reports that Bellarmine Mugabe, the son of the late Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, has pleaded guilty in South Africa to charges of pointing a firearm. According to BBC News, Bellarmine was arrested back in February after a 23-year-old man was shot at his home in Johannesburg. The case drew widespread attention given the prominent family name involved. Robert Mugabe, who ruled Zimbabwe for nearly 4 decades before being ousted in a 2017 military coup, died in 2019, but his family has remained in the public eye. The guilty plea is a significant legal development, though BBC News has not yet detailed what sentencing is expected. For many observers, this story represents a striking contrast. The son of a man who wielded near-absolute power over an entire nation now facing criminal accountability in a neighboring country's courts. We'll keep an eye on how this case develops. Staying in the energy space, because today is truly a day dominated by energy headlines. Here's a story with major implications for European travelers and aviation. The Financial Times reports that the European Union is actively preparing for a jet fuel sharing arrangement between member states, as supplies of aviation fuel dwindle at an alarming pace. EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen issued a stark warning, saying that Europe is moving toward a supply crisis, and he used the phrase, very rapidly. This is a story that doesn't get the headlines it probably deserves. Aviation fuel, or jet fuel, is already under strain from the broader energy disruptions linked to the regional conflicts we've been discussing today, as well as ongoing supply chain pressures. If Europe does reach a crisis point, we could be looking at disrupted flight schedules, higher airfares, and significant knock-on effects for European economies that depend heavily on air travel and tourism. The fact that the EU is already in discussions about sharing fuel supplies between countries suggests this isn't a distant hypothetical. Officials are treating it as a near-term threat. Another reminder of just how interconnected global energy markets and geopolitical events truly are. Wrapping up today's coverage with one more story out of London that underscores the global tensions playing out on British soil. BBC News reports that 3 individuals, 2 teenagers and a 21-year-old man, have appeared in court charged with arson with intent to endanger life, following an attack on Persian media offices in the British capital. The charges are serious. Arson with intent to endanger life carries severe penalties under UK law. BBC News has not yet detailed which specific media organization was targeted, but the fact that Persian-language media offices in London were the target is deeply significant given the current state of UK-Iran relations and the broader tensions we've been covering throughout today's show. Persian-language broadcasters based in London, including those critical of the Iranian government, have long reported harassment and intimidation campaigns. London's Metropolitan Police have charged all 3 individuals, and the case is now moving through the court system. This is yet another data point in what appears to be an escalating pattern of Iran-linked activity on British soil, a pattern that UK security services are clearly taking very seriously. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Genai World News. From crashing oil prices and a fragile ceasefire in Lebanon, to AI controversy at the White House, terror alerts in London, and Europe's looming jet fuel crisis, it has been a packed day on the world stage. If you found this useful, please give us a thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss a daily update. I'll see you next time.